While having your morning cup of coffee and browsing through the newspaper, have you ever been confronted with something like this? Or this? What about this? And finally, this. And if you have you ever wondered, who's to blame? Hi, I'm Astrid Vandendaele and I'm currently doing PhD research on the role of the newspaper sub-editor at the Ghent University Department of Linguistics. In my PhD, I'm taking a linguistic ethnographic approach to sub-editing. At the moment, Ellen van Praet, professor at the Ghent University Department of Translation, Interpreting and Communication, and I are looking into what actually happens in the sub-editing stage. Newspaper accuracy research in the US, in Ireland, in the German-speaking world, more recently in Italy and Switzerland, and in Belgium, show that the press indeed frequently errs. Vigilant readers find errors in at least every other news article, with misquotations and inaccurate headlines as the most commonly cited errors. We should ask ourselves, who's to blame for these inaccuracies? To answer that question, Colin Borletz et al. Asked sources to list what they believed were the causes of error. They listed, among other reasons, lack of understanding, deadline pressure and pressure to scoop others, insufficient research, the fact that the reporter didn't ask enough or the right questions, and laziness. To them, the journalist is the one to blame. The sub-editor, who we would claim actually played a crucial role here, is overlooked. Why? Well, because he's actually a kind of semi-ghost haunting the newsroom. Sub-editors are mostly ignored or forgotten by the readership, as first of all, there's no byline present recognising his work, and many are unsure what their role is. Actually, the sub-editor is also somewhat overlooked in the newsroom due to matters of time, space, and hierarchy. But what does he actually do? Like other journalism roles, sub-editing is demanding and requires constant attention to detail within a fast-paced working environment. They check the written text of newspapers, magazines before they're published. They're responsible for ensuring correct grammar and spelling. They rewrite material so that it flows better. They ensure that a story fits a particular word count by cutting or expanding, etc., etc. Yet these important cogs in the newspaper machine remain overlooked in research. Just as the news foregrounds some stories, the scope of journalism studies has been less than fully comprehensive. When looking at the scholarship on news production processes, it's clear that journalists are predominantly cast as the main actors. From a linguistic research angle, the sub-editor has equally been ignored. As newsrooms downsized during much of the past decade, sub-editors particularly suffered. Many outlets sought to save money by reducing their ranks, and some analysts are predicting that sub-editors face an existential crisis. There seems to have been a decision made along the way that sub-editing is a luxury. But is the sub-editing profession truly endangered? Signs point to yes. Newspaper publishers around the world have been centralizing and outsourcing their sub-editing operations to cut costs in so-called sub-hubs. Moreover, software options for journalists, i.e. automated sub-editing subscription services, are being introduced. How will the centralized and automated editing impact on the journalism industry's sub-editors? Well, can a machine actually replace them? We argue that actually sub-editors are quality control officers. Sub-editors often need to figure out what the author is trying, failing to say, and then say it for them. They are writers as much as they are spell checkers and comma fixers. On the other hand, they also need to have the sensitivity to know not to meddle when changes are unnecessary. Done properly, sub-editing is an art. Sub-editors can bring a newspaper to life. How did I come to these conclusions? Well, here's my confession, I am a sub-editor. I became increasingly aware of the lack of knowledge about the sub-editors. I've been working as a freelance subber for several years for a large national newspaper in Belgium. Its headquarters are located in Brussels. Combining my on-the-job experience and academic background, the initial stage of my research centered on the larger newsroom structures in which the subbers operate. We argue that this exploring of the newsroom model is necessary, not only considering the general newsroom flow, but also considering the much debated future of the newspaper sub-editor. In order to explore the sub's position in the news production chain, we took an ethnographic approach. We drew on participant observation in the newsrooms of a Belgian broadsheet and a broadsheet from the Netherlands. Those newspapers have recently become linked through a takeover by a Belgian media company. Because of my professional link with the Belgian newspaper, I was able to closely and freely observe the sub-editing practices within both newsrooms. In our study of the sub-editor, we observed how at both newspapers the newsroom model differed from those previously described by Esser, and we hence proposed the term Lowlands newsroom model. At the same time, we demonstrate how, although the same Lowlands newsroom model is applied in both newsrooms, spatial setting, division of workload, and the sub-editor's profile impact on the sub's ability to intervene in the production process. At this point, we aim to track what actually happens to newspaper articles in the sub-editing phase. Our research questions are: which differences do we notice between initial and final versions of an article, and how can we label those? And can we relate the different types of interventions to different genres of articles, based on exact statistical information and analysis? We do this by comparing an article's what we've termed initial version to its final version as it appears in the newspaper. By initial, we mean the version of the article that has been officially cleared to be sub-edited by the desk chief, and the finished article will have been read by the designated sub-editor and will have been sent to the layout editor, ready to be sent off to the printers. Our pilot corpus consists of 30 articles within the broader news article category. When comparing the first versions of the articles with their final versions, we've noticed three major types of interventions, i.e. addition, replacement, and deletion. We further labelled those transformations based on the level of interventions, i.e. character typography, character punctuation, phrase, subclause, clause, and font. We've uploaded those articles in an Excel file, and Ellen and I are coding them separately. Next, actual sub-editors will be going through our labeling and we will triangulate our findings. Then we will use these data to further categorize changes, calculate frequencies, to finally come to the necessary conclusions. Some preliminary conclusions we have arrived at today are that there are indeed different amounts of interventions in the different genres of news articles. Sub-editors actually add more than they delete, and they play a huge role in the salability of a news story to the reader. Their impact on elements of article constructions like headlines, subheaders, streamers, choice of images, and captions is huge. Our upcoming further research, i.e. the story of a news story in the sub-editing stage, will further clarify this. Now, machines, in our conclusion, will never be able to even approach what a good subber can accomplish. However, as newsrooms continue to shrink, journalists are being asked to do more on their own, so there's no doubt that the sub-editor is an endangered species. However, we predict that classic newsroom roles will have to be transformed. Language expertise, an eye for breaking news, and graphic design skills need to be merged. The sub-editor will never disappear from the newsroom, as his expertise will be part and parcel of the journalist of the future. Thank you very much.